new Bachelor, Matt James.
Love for me is about the heart. And the way that I view life, everything is a blessing. Love causes you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. I've got this beautiful diamond that represents so much more than you could ever imagine.
All right, Bachelor fans, I'm throwing my hat into the ring because, believe it or not, people actually wanted me to talk about this show. Considering that over 85% of my audience here on my YouTube channel is female, I am not that surprised, but a variety of people wanted me to give my thoughts on season 25 of The Bachelor, mainly because of the historic context of the show having the first black bachelor. I know the joke goes around that anytime anybody mentions, well, how come we never had a black bachelor before? You did. It's called The Flavor of Love. Obviously, that's like comparing Burger King to Walmart. They might look similar, but they certainly are not the same. So just to give you a brief bit of history, I have not watched anything from the Bachelor franchise. That includes The Bachelorette. I know there are at least, 3 or 4 other spin-offs like The Bachelors in Paradise or something along those lines, but I have not consumed any Bachelor franchise material in well over a decade. The last time I vaguely remember watching an episode was with some friends in college. During my time in college, we had like brother dorm, sister dorm, and a couple of girls I knew from the sister dorm watched The Bachelor or Bachelorette, whichever one was on at the time. And it was kind of a funny thing. We would kind of, talk about it, but I fell off the Bachelor bandwagon, or I believe it's called Bachelor Nation now. So I think Jake was the Bachelor when I stopped watching. So that was about 2010. So yes, well over a decade. But I decided, it's 2021. It's time to add some new content to the channel outside of the Tyler Perry, BET, umbrella, kind of branch out a little bit. I did watch Love is Blind last year. I binged it in one day because it sucked me right into the ridiculous reality TV show of Finding Love. And I figured The Bachelor would be cringy, but I will say, I had a good time watching it. Believe it or not, I had a good time watching the 2-hour premiere, because the first hour was basically introducing us to Matt. And from there, we meet the women. They all get out of the limo. And then the second hour is the one-on-one time. If you are lucky enough to score one-on-one time, the first rose ceremony, and then a preview of what's to come this season. And it felt like riding a bike because, I could easily tell who's there as the, for the sake of drama versus those who genuinely seem to be there for love. I know it's all a hoax, people. I know some people didn't want me to review this. Like, well, Jeremy, if you're not into reality TV and just because he's the first black bachelor doesn't mean the same kind of tropes won't be there. I knew what I was getting into, and I must say, what made this such a great show to, I guess you could say, reinsert into my life, or in the entertainment part of my life, that is, it felt like a great form of escapism given everything going on in the world today. So not to hold you any much, longer on this introduction, but just to give you a breakdown, if you are familiar with my reviews on this channel, I pretty much, break things down critically and, Easter eggs and all. Remember, I haven't watched The Bachelor in over a decade. So this is just going to be me giving my thoughts on Matt. The ladies, I'll make some, observations towards who I felt made some of the most memorable first impressions, and we'll talk about the rose ceremony and go from there. So I usually give scores whenever I rate shows. On a scale of 1 to 10, I really don't know what to score The Bachelor. I guess if I do score, it will just be based off my enjoyment factor of the episode. So I'll give this about a 9 out of 10 because I really enjoyed myself for those 2 hours. So without further ado, please take a moment to hit the like button, hit subscribe, click the bell notification icon, and select all. That way you don't miss out whenever I post new content to the channel. And make sure you follow me on my social media platforms. Links are in the description below. And based off how this video does, as well as maybe, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the show, I'll continue to review it. So, the first 50 seconds of the show, I believe her name was Katie, and she goes up to Matt and gives kind of a speech about how, life has been tough during quarantine, during the pandemic, and, I brought something with me to share with you, something that would, it helped me through rough times. I wanted to pass it on to you. And turns out to be a vibrator. Matt laughs uncontrollably, and we get to the theme opening, and Chris Harrison does his thing. Truth be told, Chris Harrison, I loved the guy growing up. I was a kid. My mom, we would watch this kind of TV, back in the day whenever the cable was cut off and we only had the basic channels like ABC. So I'm well aware of The Bachelor, all the TGIF lineup. Basically, that was nothing else to watch. Basically, it was Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and The Bachelor, and whatever reality show was on, like The Mole. I remember The Mole very well. And I just liked the guy's voice. So as a kid, I'm like, man, this guy has a soothing voice. And now I'm doing YouTube for a living because, well, people like my voice. Funny how things go around full circle, like the engagement ring. So turns out there are a few different things that should be noted about this season. Number one, a record-breaking amount of applicants applied to be the women to try to end up with Matt. Of course, this is the first time we have a black bachelor. And I have to say, I really enjoyed, quote unquote, meeting Matt. He's 28 and from North Carolina. I'm 29 from Virginia. I think what really made me freak out by watching The Bachelor after such a long hiatus is I was more or less, a kid, if you will, young adult, between, what was I? Probably like 17 or so when I stopped watching the show. So I was watching the show and seeing adults on here, people in their careers, people, fresh out of college and whatnot. So they're in their mid to late 20s and above. So when I'm looking at the women, not to jump too far ahead, but when I was looking at the women and their ages and occupations, I'm like, holy crap, I'm older than most of these contestants. So it really did, put me in my place that, yeah, I'm getting old. So basically, he's a real estate broker in New York City, and he works with inner city youth. His father was black, and his mother is white. Unfortunately, his parents split when he was young, him and his siblings, and he stayed with his mother, lived in a Christian household. And I ain't gonna lie, when his mother first appeared, I thought it was Meryl Streep for a second. I don't mean that in a bad way. I like Meryl Streep. So they have a heart-to-heart. Basically, he talks about how he's scared about heartbreak and being vulnerable, but he's ready to embrace the change. Basically, during the quarantine, he pretty much had time to reflect on his life, what was missing, and that really gave him like the courage to apply for The Bachelor. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how things turn out. But I will say he does seem to have like a strong relationship with his mom. And, I really like the guy. I just met him like, he seems like a good guy. Yeah, I was feeling some kind of way, though. He had to do a workout montage and everything. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's all good. You were in quarantine and you discovered, what was missing from your life, which apparently was love and somebody to share your time with. During quarantine, I discovered DoorDash and I got the stretch marks to prove it. So, you know what? To each his own. He's getting I guess you could say he's a Christian. So obviously he's an Adam looking for his Eve to get his rib back. And I just ordered a McRib from DoorDash an hour ago. It's a good trade-off. So basically, we get to meet some of the women. I had forgotten that this was, of course, the most recent season of The Bachelor that was filmed, obviously, last year. So a lot of quarantine and pandemic, what do you want to call it? Precautions or protocols are taking place, where the women have quarantine housing and, they have to get, COVID tests and whatnot. So when we were meeting some of the women, the one that stood out to me was Anna, because apparently she's a caffeine fiend. I knew something was up when we were introduced to her and she was holding up 2 cups. Basically she had that caffeine addict look in her eye. No shade towards those who drink coffee and whatnot. I myself have only had about 5 cups of coffee in my life, 3 of which came from Starbucks in the past year and a half. So I can't really sit up here and say I can relate to her, but she's one of those people who's a bit too energetic, if you ask me. She does seem like a sweetheart, though, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't see her getting past, the first rose ceremony, but I was wrong. We meet another one. Look, I didn't write down all the names because there are way too many, but, I just wanted to talk about the ones who kind of stood out. We met an attorney. I like the fact that there's a diversity to the women, but I'll get back to that in a second because Matt and Chris have a very good talk, and I want to spend time talking about that as well. But, when we meet the women, we got the ballerina, and I have to say that Alicia, I believe her name was, Alicia, who was 24 from West Virginia. And, I'm looking at some of these people like, well, dang, if I actually got my butt on a dating app, I probably could have met some of these people. But, oh, well, I'm a homebody. So we move to the new, I believe it's like a new mansion that they're in. And I'm thinking, wow, this looks like something straight out of a music video. I feel like, wow, is this a Flavor Flav show or not? So Matt and Chris meet face to face. First thing he says, damn, you're tall. I mean, yeah, he's a tall dude. From seeing him work out to his height, it makes a brother feel insecure about himself. Wanted to make me flip the channel, but I said, nope, I'm going to hang in there. And I'm glad I did. Because it's funny considering Chris is just having, this conversation with Matt. And I really do feel for the guy because he's genuinely nervous. I mean, it isn't just that he's black. It's the fact that he's new to this. This is his first time on a platform like this. This isn't a situation where, a season of The Bachelorette comes to an end. And one of the remaining guys, like let's say there were one or three guys left, and then one of those guys that was turned down turns out to be the new bachelor. No, this is somebody fresh and new to the fold, and he's nervous, and he wanted to talk with Chris. He's like, hey, you mind if we go inside, have a little chat first? I gotta ask some questions. And it's like, wait, you don't want to meet the ladies? Yeah, I do, but I'm nervous. I just want to talk with you first. And they go inside, and once again, this really made it feel more like this is a real person rather than just somebody who's here for their 15 minutes of fame. So he just talks about how he's nervous, meeting all these new people, but being the first black bachelor, there's a lot of pressure. Kind of like, the first black anything, president, baseball player, lawyer, surgeon, that kind of stuff. It's like there's always that expectation because you don't want to feel like you're going to disappoint anyone, despite the fact that Matt's on this show to find his true love. So regardless of, if I don't pick a black person, then the black people will be mad at me. But then if I don't pick white, it's like, oh, wow, you don't want to date anyone who's not black. So why not have 30 something black women up on here? But then if I did, it would be a situation where it's like, oh, I see how it is. Whenever there's a white bachelor or white bachelorette, it's like a diversity, but when it's black, it has to be all black. BLM movement, I see what this is. So there's so many expectations coming from being the first black bachelor. And I gotta hand it to Chris. He did a great job. I mean, he felt like a bachelor dad in the bachelor pad. I know that was corny, but so is this show. He was giving some great advice as a mentor, almost like a friend, basically saying that, hey, as long as you're genuine and you know why you're here, the pressure should kind of lift off. But be aware, there will be times where you hate this process, where you hate me. But if you hang in there, you're going to make it through this. And basically each week is going to get more nerve wracking with the rose ceremonies. I mean, I feel like I can go on and on and on about this scene alone. And this is before any of the women come to meet Matt, just because we're 25 minutes in, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to enjoy this season. Maybe it's because it's, I'm a brother watching another brother, but I just really felt like this didn't feel as, I guess you could say, much of a televised hoax as I'm used to it being. Hence why I stopped watching the show back in the day. So I love at the end of the conversation, it's kind of like a dad talking to his son. No pun intended, given the fact that, Matt comes from a biracial family, or biracial, parents. Well, excuse me. He comes from a interracial couple. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. But I think that's also an interesting dynamic of it, where the first black bachelor comes from a mother and father who aren't both black. So in a way, it's almost like, oh, it's kind of interesting where you have that aspect of it and you have a diverse selection of women for him to choose from. So I did like that angle. And when Chris is like, so you want to go out and meet the women? I just love the way he said that. It's like a dad giving his son a pep talk. It's like, so you want to go get some ice cream? It's like, yeah, let's go. So here we go. The first limo pulls up and the women start chanting Matt's name. Matt, 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 Matt. Let me just say this. I'm not going to go through every single woman because there's like, what was it, 32 of them. I just really want to talk about, I even have it in my notes here from each limo, kind of like the standouts. I might mess up some of the names, but when I talk about the different antics that they tried, I think, you'll know who I'm talking about here. But yeah, this is the back half of the first hour. And we have Bree come out, and she is a communications manager. Now, when I was in undergrad, I was a communications major, advertising public relations. So real quick side note, I'm looking at the list online right now because thankfully Wikipedia has a full list of all this information, like the women's name, location, age, and occupation. Something else I wanted to point out is the fact that looking at a lot of these occupations, I remember back in the day, they were looked at like a joke. Oh, she's a blogger. Oh, she's like a social media, accountant or something like that. Like back in the early 2010s, like that kind of stuff was kind of looked down on as that's not a real job. But now it's actually a norm because I just saw so many occupations that fit into the realm of what, I could do in my degree, like journalism, marketing management, marketing specialist, IT consultant, broadcast journalist, graphic design. Okay, graphic designer, no. Too many bad experiences with Max back in the day. But, pharmacist, corporate attorney, fashion entrepreneur. Of course, we got Queen, but we'll get to Victoria. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the interactions between Matt and these wonderful women.
I think you are the greatest of all time.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll also think that I'm the GOAT. Everybody has something to bring to the table, so I hope he remembers those at least.
All right, so Bree, left a good impression in that green dress. And one question I had to, I was thinking to myself is, can the ladies hear what Matt's saying as they're walking away from him? Because it's not like he said anything, too raunchy or anything, but he was just saying some things that it's like, if, let's say I was on The Bachelorette and, the Bachelorette said something slick while I was going up the stairs. And if I heard that, I would have been smiling like, yeah, I'm getting a rose tonight. I'd be thinking that. My face would show it, though. But then we meet Sarah, who I believe is the broadcast journalist. And I believe her story is her father came down with some sort of disease, I believe. And, they have kind of a reel of her, broadcast work. And, as I was looking at this, it's like, okay, she's sweet, but it's like, oh, it's kind of that little trope where, you got somebody with a sad backstory. And then she did make a good first impression, when she talked about how she would be homesick and all. But during this time, hopefully Matt will feel like home to her. And I'm like, oh, dang, that was good. So I'd say that Sarah, in my opinion, out of limo number 1, had the best first impression. So here we go with limo number 2. We got Caroline, who gave him a piece of lavender, and as a sucker for lavender myself, I ain't gonna lie, sister recommended lavender Epsom salt if I ever felt sore. I gotta say, that stuff worked. So if I would have been handed a piece of lavender by a girl, automatic rose. I ain't gonna lie. We got Anna, the caffeine fiend, who gave Matt a Bachelor survival kit. I thought that was adorable. Kayla pulls up in a truck because it turns out she's from North Carolina. Go on and raise up. I use a stick. You better put some respect on my name. I like that. I'm kind of jumping ahead now, but I dare say Kayla could easily be in the top 3, because while Sarah was hoping that eventually being with Matt would feel like home, you get Kayla, who's from North Carolina, just like Matt was. So I think what gives her an advantage is not just being black, just the fact that she's kind of a reminder of where Matt came from. So I like their connection right off that. Next, we have Serena, who tripped up. And I ain't gonna lie, that was cute. I love how, Matt was laughing. And as the night progresses, as more women come up, you just see how nervous he was. And I think that translates into his one-on-one times with them later on in the episode. But I really thought that a lot of them made great first impressions. We have another girl, Serena. I think we have multiple women named Serena. Yeah, Serena P, Serena C. Yeah, so she came up and she had a step stool in order to reach his height. I thought that was adorable. And I like how the women who had already went up the stairs looking down the window, and they were kind of like, oh, that was cute. Oh, I wish I would have thought of that. And I like that. Obviously, as time goes on, the women would kind of, kitty claws against each other, but I kind of like the fact that they were all having a good time. And as they're coming up the stairs, they all kind of talked about, oh, he was so nervous. It was cute. And the fact that he was nervous and I was nervous, it made it feel more real. And it just felt like a good time. I believe Alana, she pulled a Lady and a Tramp noodle kiss scene, gave him a bowl of noodles, and basically the only thing missing was the meatball. But don't worry, that's going to come up later in limo number 3. Afterwards, we have, Lord have mercy. Well,
I think you'd look great in anything you wear, but I kind of like the strapless.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
We'll see you soon.
Take care. Wow. Damn.
I appreciate anybody going out of their way to make a gesture.
You gotta love a woman with confidence.
Lord have mercy. The Lord is my shepherd. He know what I want.
Well, of course you love that, Matt. Who would he talking about? Yeah, I like a woman who can, put himself out there and be confident. Make a gesture, make a stand, and walk up there in her lingerie. We all know what you were looking at, Matt. And then women, they were just blown away. It's like they were looking at Kaylee, and they were like, I knew what was going on in their minds. They ain't just say it. They were thinking it though. They were like, you know what? I think she is a hostess because that's her occupation. She's a hostess. So I can't believe she did that. I mean, that was, hey, first impressions matter. And it's like that alone pretty much guaranteed her a spot in week 3, if you ask me. So there you go. Anyway, limo number 3, we got Abigail, who, like Sarah, had a bit of a sad story where she's actually deaf. I think earlier in the episode when we met a couple of the ladies, she talked about how the device she wears, if she takes it off, she can't hear. But at first, again, I'm thinking, oh, it must be that trope where you got to find somebody with a sob story. But I'll talk about them more when we go into the episode in the one-on-one. But I like their first meeting because she literally told him on the spot, hey, I'm deaf. And once again, not to jump too far ahead, but that actually lines up with what Matt was saying before about the vulnerability. And you have it. I just find it ironic how you have one woman come up in her lingerie, basically putting it all out there, but she was wearing a robe. And you have her telling Matt, what dress do you want me to wear? Go with the strapless. And then the very next woman is someone who has something on that if she takes off, she's super vulnerable. But it just took her telling Matt who she was to make a great first impression. I'm like, you know what? Dang it, Abigail. I'm sold. You did it. That was good. All right. So next we meet a girl named Piper. And the last time I heard the name Piper was from, what was that Disney movie? What was it? The Color of Friendship? I believe her name was Piper, the black girl out of the duo from that movie. So yeah, you can Google that, to fact check me. But basically, the first thing she said, when I get married, my parents were like, whenever me or my siblings ever got married, we were to keep our last name. So it's a good thing both of our names are James. I'm like, that was slick. Because at first I'm like, oh man, is she pulling one of those Jesse Spanos from Saved by the Bell, where, I remember one episode when all the gang had to, get married in class, and she was telling Slater, well, I just want to keep my last name. It's like, oh, great. So basically, that was a cute moment. I like how some of these women, like, if they didn't have crazy antics, they had some, I don't even want to say cheesy, but some of them were pretty straight up corny jokes or one-liners that were definitely icebreakers, and that's what made a lot of these women memorable in my mind. Next up, we have a woman driving up in a pizza car. Once again, automatic rose, especially if it's a meat lovers from Pizza Hut. I ain't gonna lie, low key, if it was a Little Caesars pizza, Lord have mercy. Name is MJ. Stops the car, looking all seductive. Oh, I got something for you, baby. Goes to open the back door and oh Lord, it wouldn't even open. You know what? Let me start it over. And I love what she said during the little one-on-one interview during that moment, where she was like, hey, you know what? When first impressions matter, but when one door won't open, you open up another one. She should have said that while she was walking around the car. I would have been like, right there. I love that ingenuity. Hands him a pizza. They hug. She goes inside. My only issue is we did not see what kind of pizza it was. I feel like that's a, judge of character right there. Is it plain cheese? Or did it have some toppings on there? There's a difference now. Trust me, there's a difference. All right, so after that, we get little Miss Katie, who made her introduction known at the beginning of the episode with that little snippet preview. And she pulls out the vibrator. I was thinking the same thing as Matt. Like, she just wielding that thing like a damn lightsaber. So when she walks off, and when she walks off, Matt's like, wow, she just had that thing flaming like a lightsaber. I'm just like, see, I was thinking the same thing, Matt. And she goes inside, and the lady's like, so what's that behind your back? Vibrator. Wait, what? What's his name? MJ? No, that's my name. Okay, fine. It's MJ. Oh, yeah, it's the star. MJ. So, man, we'll get back to Katie later. We got Amber riding up on the bike. We got Kimberly throwing a big-ass fish. I'm like, what's going on? I did not get this was at the point where, they were just kind of skipping over people. Just, oh, here's like 3 seconds on this girl, 3 seconds on that girl. But this girl comes out, Kimberly comes out of the limo with a big fish and just, I guess, tosses it to Matt, and he kind of fumbles it a little bit. And I'm thinking to myself, if a woman threw a big fish at me like that without any kind of context, not even a pun, I would have been like, get your bass back in that limo and drive off. Because I don't know what was going on. So next thing we have Cassandra, who's from Cassandra, she had a jersey on. I thought that was a pretty slick move. It was like Mrs. James. I thought that was pretty slick. But, unfortunately, not to spoil, but she don't make it to the next week. We go to the next interesting woman. I believe her name was Alima. And I knew something was a bit strange when the first thing she said to Matt was, will you let me put my balls in your mouth? Apparently he ate it up because, well, next thing you know, when he opened his eyes, he was eating a giant meatball. See, remember earlier when that one girl had the bowl of noodles doing the Lady and the Tramp thing? This must have been the follow-up. They must have collaborated on that. You got Kit, a.k.a. Keep in Touch, rolling up in a Bentley once again like a freaking music video. First impression. But the last woman of the night, you knew who she was just based off the way she was introduced. Basically like one of those emperors or whatever, or kings or royalty. She's brought on a throne carried by 4 men, like she's like Miss America or something like that. She goes up, introduces herself. Her occupation is the queen. Because her whole gimmick is, like Queen Victoria, yeah. But she acts more regal than this wannabe queen was. First of all, Your occupation is queen, but what country are you queen of? That's what I'm wondering. Like, what qualifies you to use the title? Sure, there are quote unquote celebrities and social media people who use titles like queen, king, lord, emperor, all willy nilly, but queen, like I said earlier, looking at the occupations, for the most part, what may have seemed odd or out there back in like 2005, 2010 are the norm. Like, again, social media, things like that. But queen? Queen? All right, so I will admit that was a sweet crown that she gave him. But she goes in, first thing she says, the queen has arrived. And I'm quoting her, so please forget the language, but the queen has arrived, bitches. I don't know what the cameraman was doing, but they just made sure to zoom in on Kit because Kit don't like Victoria. And that's something we'll see during hour number 2. So to end off the first hour, you know, Katie stands up and, you know, kind of like at weddings and all, when there's an announcement, you know, you take a fork or spoon and kind of, you know, ding, 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 against the glass. For whatever reason, she decides to use a vibrator as a method to get everybody's attention. And they all cheer for Matt. So that's the end of the first hour. And I got to say, it was interesting. Like I said, I enjoyed the first part, you know, introducing us to Matt, getting back in the Bachelor swing of things, because I really felt like it was easy to transition back into a show I haven't been a part of as a consumer in over 10 years. We met some interesting women for the most part, even the ones who made awkward first impressions. Oh yeah, speaking of awkward, Victoria walks away, and when she's almost fully up the stairs, she trips like, oh damn, you good? It's like, oh no, I'm good. I'm like, oh okay, I know what kind of person she is. So then we get to hour 2, and this is when the women, you know, they're trying to get time with Matt, and they're also, you know, just talking with each other because it's 32 of them, and obviously not everyone will get to talk with Matt at the same time, so you might as well, you know, mingle, enjoy some free drinks. Also, side note, I noticed in the background of one of the scenes, I think this was when Matt was walking through the rooms with the first impression rose. I noticed in the corner there was a bartender. She was wearing a mask. I know it's just a random thing to point out, but I just like that little touch. It's like, for a moment, I forgot that it was quote unquote a pandemic, you know, given that everybody didn't have masks on, but obviously they're quarantined and tested. But to actually see, you know, that bartender in the background with a mask on, it just was a little piece of the reality that we're in right now, despite the fact that this show was a way for me to escape reality. It's not a complaint. It was a fun observation. That's all I mean. So, you know, we got the 32 women. You got the first impression rose. You know, Chris gives, you know, Matt the little pep talk. Hey, you met the women. Here's the rose. Have fun and go inside. And my brother Matt leads a piece, starts off the night with prayer. When I tell you this hit home, being that my job prior to doing YouTube was a job where every day, every shift would start off with prayer, this was a big deal for me. And I really enjoyed that. And Rachel, she was just moved by that prayer. She's like, Lord, that was good. It's like, he gives a great speech about being, you know, vulnerable, what it means to be part of the Bachelor, everybody coming from different walks of, you know, well, different parts of the world. I believe it was the one girl, Maji from Ethiopia, but she's from DC now, who's a pharmacist. You know, just people from all around the world. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like to be the Bachelor when you're standing out there meeting all these women, and then later on when you, you know, you're meeting the women as they get out of the limo, and then you're meeting the women again when you have one-on-one time, and they're basically saying, I'm here for you. I've waited my whole life for a man like you. You know, that awkward moment where people are singing happy birthday, but you don't know where to look at because everybody's looking at you. Now imagine it's you and a room full of women, and every single one of them has the, I came just for you. You're who I'm waiting for. It's like, I'd be intimidated as all hell. Not to mention most of them, I mean, not most of them, they're all so freaking beautiful. Like, I'd be sweating like I don't know what when the first girl, even before the first woman stepped foot out of the limo, when the door opened, I'll be like, Lord Hammer, I need to use the restroom. I got to go. Like, So he leads prayer, does a great speech. Rachel is definitely feeling it. You know, as a person who studied seminary and grad school and grew up in church, I'm rocking with what Matt was saying. So we got some, you know, interesting first impressions, you know, like, sorry, there's a loud truck in the parking lot. One girl takes him out to play a game of chess, and most women are worried about not having one-on-one time. I believe her name was Mari. She, I believe, was a beauty queen or Miss Maryland or something. What's her name? Mari. She is a marketing director. Wasn't she Miss Maryland, I think? Because I looked it up and I'm like, wait a minute, that name looks familiar. So they're having a good heart-to-heart. Turns out her family, they're all from Puerto Rico. And, basically they're talking about, yeah, that's, hard based off, the storm, hurricane and all that happened recently. So when it seemed like Matt and Mari were having a heart-to-heart, you got Dildo Girl poking her on the shoulder. Hey, you mind if I steal Matt? I'm like, hell yeah. First of all, I don't know. I know I was talking with a couple people about this before I did the video, and they were like, I love when she did that. It was funny. And like the girl's reaction, I'm like, first of all, I don't know you like that. I don't know where that thing's been. And you're going to just poke me on the naked shoulder with it? If you don't get it's one thing to be upset that your one-on-one time was interrupted, especially when it looked like they were just getting into a conversation. But a vibrator, which has been used clearly, because she said, she joked about it. Don't worry, I cleaned it. But it's like, again, like, I don't even like people touching me on the shoulder, and I don't even know you like that. So to use a personal device like that, we're going to have problems. That's all I got to say. So, we got Miss Pickup Truck and Matt chilling in the back, drinking sweet tea from, I believe, like a preserves jar. Again, I think she's definitely going to make it. Kayla, she's definitely going to be like a top contender, if you ask me, just because she truly has that home nature that Matt is accustomed to. So I really felt like they connected, which we move on to Kit, Mrs. Bentley, or AKA Keep in Touch, brought a snow globe, New York City, because, hey, now that you're a New Yorker, this should, help us feel connected. You got the queen coming up. Hey, princess, you mind if I steal him away? And Kit is obviously just bamboozled, so she walks off. She goes upstairs talking about how she's upset about it. And what gets me is, like, you got Victoria talking with Matt about, he's talking about, how nervous he is and how, this whole experience, like, drinking from a fire hose. Like, what does that mean? Is that Southern slang? And it's like, you go from having Mari and Kit and, a couple other girls where they're having these, wow, Matt's really connecting with these women, to a woman who just by that one statement, I understand it, like, she's from California, he's from like North Carolina / New York, so obviously the jargon is going to be different, but I didn't really feel anything between these two aside from Matt's like, oh wow, she's attractive, to that's it. I really don't. But there's always the drama queen. So from there, they have their one-on-one, and she goes upstairs, and it's like, yeah, so I had a great time speaking with Matt. Kit's like, Kit ain't feeling that, because Kit's talking with a couple of the women, and it just so happens that, Victoria goes over to where she's sitting, and it's like, hey, if you want to go talk with him, just go do it. It's like, you got to do what you got to do. And I forgot the one girl's name, but she ain't have a chance to talk at all. I think her name was Amber or Carolyn. They didn't have a chance to talk with Matt at all. And I understand it's a dog eat dog, but at the same time, it's like the first impression Rose is brought into. Again, there's a motorcycle outside. Chris comes in, brings in the first impression Rose, left on the table. The queen goes up for round 2 to talk with Matt. And the other women are like, what the heck is going on? And the girls are freaking out over the rose. They're like, oh, I wish I got that rose. And it's like the ones who have not spoken with Matt at all, like, you know what, I ain't even going to get this rose. I don't even know what I'm tripping about. I'm just trying to make it through the first elimination round. So then we go over to Abigail. And it's a great conversation. It really was. We're kind of flipping Matt between the conversation between Abigail and Matt, and then the women who are just freaking out over that first impression rose, because after 2 conversations with Matt, Victoria is like, oh, I know it's my rose. And it's like, I get it because you're fighting for the time, but it's like, if you've already talked with him, there's really no need to do it a second time, because if you ask me, that makes you look a little more desperate. The women who have already spoken with Matt once, they obviously felt like, hey, I really wish I had more time, but I feel like the time I did spend with him was sufficient enough to at least get the conversation going. So I should at least make it through round 1 so I can get to know him more week 2. So if a girl came up to me more than once while I haven't had a chance to talk with everybody, that'd be a problem if you ask me. But that's just me. I ain't on The Bachelor. I'm just a YouTuber. So he ends up giving her the first impression rose, Abigail, because of the fact that when Matt took the rose and was walking through the rooms and all the women were looking like, Lord, some of them looked like they were about to stab Matt. It was funny because you go to the prayer and everybody was like, oh, I felt it. That was great. I'm like, y'all praying with him now, but y'all going to be cursing if you don't get a rose during the ceremony. Because I'm just and we'll get to the ceremony. So Abigail gets the first impression rose. And I got to say, like Matt said, the fact that my intention during my speech during the prayer was vulnerability. That's something I want to present to you. And, being honest and open with me really does make you stand out. And that's what Abigail did. Like I said before, you got the one girl, Kylie, come up there in her lingerie. Vulnerable. But you have Abigail who's like, hey, I'm deaf, but, I just wanted to let you know up front. I think earlier even Matt was like, I'll make sure to enunciate, all my words for you. And she's like, oh, that's great because you have great lips. That was when she came out of limo. So it's right there. I'm like, okay, nice touch. So here we go. The first rose ceremony. I forgot what this felt like, just like watching everybody involved, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, back in the past, I felt like we would kind of see a moment where the Bachelor or Bachelorette would go upstairs to the room and it would have photos of all the contestants. And then we would have like a 2-minute cutaway. It's like, I had a great time meeting all the women or men tonight. And it's like, I really don't know who to choose. I don't know who to send home. It's like some of them have great first impressions. Others, I don't feel like I knew them at all. And no, we kind of just skipped from like the first rose to the rose ceremony. I'm like, oh, we're not getting that moment. Okay. So basically from there, Matt's picking the women one by one. And when I tell you it looked like constipation was on everybody's faces, that's literally what it felt like. I mean, when you think you're getting a rose, but then you're not, it's like, the anticipation, the anxiety is what I feel playing bingo. When I'm only like, it's like, I only need one more number and I can win 3. It's like when you have bingo 4 ways. If you just call a number, just like, I only need like B3 and I got this. But no, everybody wins except for you. Every number's called but you. So that, I forgot her name, the one girl, but she was like meant to like, I didn't get a chance to talk to him. This is ridiculous. I went through 4 COVID tests in quarantine for this, but she ended up getting a rose. And Anna, I felt bad for her because there was a girl behind her. Her name started with an A too. What was her name? Anna and Alana. And Alana is like, did you call Anna or Alana? No, Alana. Oh, and then eventually Anna, she was like, I'm standing right in front of him. I'm smiling. That means I'm in his point of view. So I have to have a chance of getting a rose. Victoria, I don't know if she took her makeup off, but her face looked like colorless, like the Joker in the new Batman Adventures. Like all the color was just taken off her face because all these women who were smiling and laughing, when they were down to only like 2 roses, they looked like they wanted to stab Matt. It's like, if I don't get a rose and somebody, and we get to the last rose and I'm like, I know he ain't sending the ballerina home because she did a damn twirl when she got out the limo. About a little shorter than him. Good complexion. Good moves. You ain't going to go with tippy toe, but you're going to pick the queen who is the ruler of a fake nation. Even Dr. Doom had Latveria, and he don't call himself a king. That made me mad at me. I ain't gonna lie. That was probably the first time I got in my feels. Like when I was watching Love is Blind for the first time, the first episode, 15 minutes in, the one, what was his name? Cameron said, I love you to Lauren. I'm like, I know this, it's only 13 minutes in. I remember yelling at the TV. That's how I felt. Like, I know he did not send Alicia home. I was so mad. Because it's funny how she got sent home and she was the one woman that they kind of spent time to, it's a shame I didn't get to know him. I didn't get to talk with him. I didn't get to show him the kind of love I'm capable of giving. And I'm like, she just needs somebody to hold her. That's a shame. And then we get to the end of the episode where, he's like, hey, I hope we have a great time together. Now let's change clothes. We're going to go for a hike. And they're like, what? And like, he was just kidding. And that's the end of the episode. So basically my impression, I had a good time watching it. Yes, it's obvious that, you got the shit starter, Victoria. You got Kayla, who's obviously the, basically the homegrown NC girl, just like Matt was. And I might do a separate video where I kind of go over the maybe top 5 women who I feel will make it the furthest in the competition. And maybe a separate video going over this season on The Bachelor. But I know this video was a little bit winded, but like I said, it was a 2-hour event. And I had to break things down the best I could. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of the premiere of The Bachelor Season 5? What were some of your favorite moments? What women stood out to you? Are you like me and wishing the ballerina wasn't sent home? And like I said, based on how well this video does, as well as my next few Bachelor videos, that would, determine whether or not I continue to review the show. I hope it does well, because honestly, if this first episode is an indication, I want to have a good time. So thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you would like to donate to the channel, feel free to do so on PayPal, Cash App, or join Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon.